Welcome, everybody. We have another episode of Cubs Now. It's a busy one. Myself, Alex Cohen, Lance Brozdowski. We have a lot to talk about. 2 words, Lance. Trade deadline. Chicago Cubs were buyers. Fans wanted them to get pitching. They got some pitching.
Oh, yeah, they went all out here. This is great. I think even if you just came out of this deadline with Gausman and maybe Zephyr, you would be pretty hyped. And they added on to that by getting a really interesting piece in Tyrone Taylor, which I think is really nice, especially for the playoffs and having a lefty bat off the bench, or not a lefty bat, a bat that can hit lefties off the bench.
I'm picking up what you're pushing.
You got what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And Holmes, too, on top of that. And then I think the Braxton Garrett move was kind of sneaky. So this is like, you probably give the Dodgers an A+ for Skubal at the deadline. Like, it's Tarek Skubal. I think you give the Cubs an A. I'd be surprised if anyone in the public space, I saw friends at Cespedes Barbecue I think they had him at an A-. I think that A to A- window, if you want to grade the deadline, is very appropriate, and I would lean A.
There have been fans who have talked about the risk management that this front office has when it comes to trades, what Jed Hoyer and Carter Hawkins do. In my opinion, they threw that out the window. I think they really went for it. They said at the beginning, not they said, but reporters said they were going to get 3 pitchers. Well, they got 3 big league contributing pitchers, and then one guy who you really like just, I won't say grade it, but are you surprised the Cubs were as aggressive as they were, being the second-place team in the Central and right now in a wild card spot?
Well, I thought each of these moves kind of broke down in interesting ways. The Gausman one, to me, I thought was a steal for the prospects they gave up relative to the contributions Gausman can have, and I think he could start a Game 1 or Game 2 of a playoff series. He showed that last year. He was dominant in the World Series. I remember watching those outings and going, this guy's unbelievable. His splitter's insane. You're going to see that a ton at Wrigley Field, which will be exciting. So that was a steal to me. Then he moves to the Zephyr trade. Was a tougher one to swallow. Ballesteros is a very good hitter. I do still question the defensive side of things. I was never really convinced he was going to be a great catcher, despite the fact the Cubs tried that out. So that was an expendable piece. It's a controlled reliever. So I think that's kind of more of an even trade. So I'd say you have a steal in Gausman, even trade in Ballesteros. And I would say personally they overpaid for Holmes and Tyrone Taylor, giving up Jefferson Rojas. But there are ways I think it could become less of an overpay if they think they have an edge in that negotiating window on potentially extending Clay Holmes for next season, maybe beyond that a couple years. Then it becomes more palatable. But I view that as a slight overpay, and then I thought the Braxton Garrett one was a steal. So I think they were kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
The Holmes one to me was
all
the
over
one.
The map. Yeah,
all over the map. In a good way, though. The bias towards the good. The Holmes one to me is the one that you look at and go, yeah, that to me is more of the all-in move. The Gausman one was smart. Braxton is a future one. I'd say even the Zephyr one is a future one as well. The Holmes one is like, okay, let's give up some stuff. This may hurt us in a couple years, but if we really want to push our playoff odds of getting to the championship series, the World Series up, you need Tyrone Taylor and you need Clay Holmes.
All right, let's break this down trade by trade. First,
Sure.
You brought it up. Kevin Gausman gets traded from Toronto to the Cubs. He gets traded for Brett Bateman and Ty Southazine. You talked about Kevin Gausman, how good he looked in the World Series, but if you break down his 2026 season, the stats don't really match up with the career. What's to be excited about Kevin Gausman, and what are you looking out for from his transfer from Toronto and not pitching well to hopefully going to the Cubs and then pitching well?
Yeah, I do feel like there's, underlying data is going to try to predict a pitcher's performance. As that pitcher throws more and more and more, you start to get just what they have done, and that raw sample of just results as opposed to looking at some of the underlying stuff becomes more valuable. You just need such a sample of it to believe it. That's what you have with Gausman. Like, he has pitched incredibly well for almost the entirety of his career ever since he added the split change that's now known as like the Kevin Gausman grip changeup. A lot of other guys throw. Cade Horton's, the changeup Cade Horton throws is inspired by that. I chatted with him back in 23 about it. I tweeted about that. But I think at the end of the day, you're getting a pitcher who throws a ton of strikes. He's not an on-ground guy. I do feel like David Peterson and Holmes have been names the Cubs have gone after because they want to use this defense. But I would say he does not generate a ton of hard contact in that respect. The fastball sits like in-zone middle. He has the changeup, split change below it. It's a really visual combination of those two shapes, which you're going to see a lot. It's just very uncomfortable for hitters. He loves throwing that thing righties on righties too, right on right. So it's that is the pitch. Like, it's a singular package that is like, it's almost to some extent Shota flip it around to the right side. Yeah. It's just not as elevated of a four-seam fastball.
And throws a little bit harder.
Throws a little bit harder, which allows him to kind of sit in zone with the four-seam fastball. And the negatives here are just, in the recent months, his walk rate's kind of spiked. Mike Petriello, our friend of the show, had this in there. I think it's jumped to around like 9 to 11% or so in that window. So I think that is the maybe angle you look at Hadavi and Zombro and others and go, can we fix this in a way that, puts him back to the 3 to 6% he's been at for most of his career? So that's kind of what I'm watching. But there's a ton of positives here. And I also just think he's a guy that, if you want confidence in the postseason, anytime I've seen him throw in the postseason, it's been electric. So he's my game one right now. He's my game one.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you have Kevin Gausman. He's dealt 4. Brett Bateman, Ty Southazine. You talked about it earlier that you thought the value leaned towards the Cubs in that. I think Brett Bateman's probably a big leaguer just because his bat-to-ball skills. He can run, he can defend, and he draws a lot of walks. So he does a lot of things well. Just doesn't hit for power. What's your overall take on what they gave up for him?
I really don't think they gave up a lot. I mean, the name of the game in modern baseball is bat speed. You know the bat speed? It's very, very difficult to be a major league hitter. If you are a major league hitter and you don't have bat speed, it's probably a peripheral bench piece. So I just don't anticipate either of these guys having a substantial impact on the Cubs or even the Blue Jays, really, unless
you don't
the
think
Blue
Bateman
Jays,
does?
When you don't hit the ball hard, it becomes, you have to play exceptional defense.
So you have to be Stephen Kwan.
And Kwan hits the ball hard is the thing. I know he's been bad this year, but you go back to Kwan's breakout, he crushed the ball. And then they had that weird jet stream going on at the Guardians Park Progressive in right field, which I think helped him too. So I just don't, I don't view these guys as names that I would be really bummed to give up if I was a Cubs fan for the return that you get in Kevin Gausman.
Okay, so I think Bateman's a big leaguer, but you think that the price value favors the Cubs. Let's talk about the Angels deal. They get Ryan Zefferjon. They deal both Moises Ballesteros and Mason Miller. There are fans. There are people. Right, sorry,
I wish they had Mason Miller. And if they had Mason Miller, why would they trade him? But anyway,
that would be fun. Mason McGuire and Moises Ballesteros. So Mo Baller to the Angels. This is a trade that I think could be a win-win for both teams because I think Moises Ballesteros gets to go to Anaheim and they say, hey, you know what? We're not going to be competitive for the rest of this year, probably next year. How about you catch 60% of the games? And right now you're catching with Travis d'Arnaud, who's been a big leaguer for a long time. We're going to get you that experience. And I think in his next full season, you're looking at probably a top 6, top 8 offensive catcher, hitting 275, 16 to 18 homers, 25 to 28 doubles, 800 OPS. I think he'll be successful offensively, but to have a controllable reliever like Ryan Zefferjon with elite stuff, closer stuff, you have to give to get. That's what they did. That's my take. What's your take, Lance?
Yeah, my take is I still am not convinced Ballesteros is a catcher long term. And
even in Anaheim with no depth chart?
I just think you're going to run to the point where you look at the data and it's like, okay, the framing's fine, and the blocking's not great, and he's getting run on a ton, and then you can't have him back there for 80 games. It's a multi-year development project to get him to that stage. Can the Angels do that? Absolutely. At this moment in time, I agree with you entirely on the bat side. The value of that bat is all over the place, though. If you go from catcher with that stat line as a catcher is like
it's top
Dylan
6,
Dingler.
top 8.
What we've seen from Dylan Dingler in Detroit this year.
It's
been fantastic.
Hunter Goodman light.
The inverse of it is like in a kind of the Augustin Ramirez-y profile with the Marlins, where it's like, we actually don't like him as a defender. We got to send him back to AAA to work on the catching, and then he gets surpassed by someone else.
He doesn't strike out as much as Augustin Ramirez.
True, it's a good point.
He also hits, his on-base percentage.
He's a better hitter than Augustin.
Yeah.
It's just Augustin might be a slightly better catcher. So that is the thing. It's all on the defense side, and I think the Cubs internally were dealing with that question. You don't really know, especially with the breakout of Owen Ayers, who's a surefire catcher, and you have more confidence, I think, from a defensive standpoint in handling a pitching staff, that Ballesteros becomes a little bit more expendable. And Zefferjon's fun, man. I mean, multiple years of reliever. He's kind of cut his walk rate. I know I haven't hammered him, but I mentioned that's kind of the bugaboo in his profile is like the 14-15% walk rate. But if you look since June 1st, he's cut that way back.
Awesome.
Mike Petrell had a really good piece on Baseball Savant about this.
I read it too. I thought you were going to bring that up. I liked it.
Yeah, it's a great piece. I mean, he nailed everything here. I think it's fascinating. I haven't talked to him yet, but I'm interested. He took away the cutter from his mix, and that has actually allowed his four-seamer to play better in the zone.
Yeah.
And intuitively, I think the inverse a lot of the times happens, where it's like, add the bridge breaking ball, and all of a sudden the bigger sweeper gets better. But he's done the opposite, so I got to catch up with him and see kind of what the development he's gone through over the last couple of years has been. He added a sinker this year too, and you saw that six sweeper he threw to Ohtani that was getting clipped. Cubs account tweeted it out too.
Yeah.
It was a really good shape. I mean, that thing's 88 with a ton of glove side bite. It's a really difficult pitch to catch as a hitter, and I think he's a fun name that I'm excited to see develop in the Cubs organization.
Next trade, you were talking about the Mets trade being the one that you wouldn't question, but one that years down the road you'll talk about the value. Jefferson Rojas, one of the top-ranked prospects in the Cubs system, goes to the Mets for both Clay Holmes and Tyrone Taylor. Clay Holmes coming back from an injury. His next start is going to be with the Cubs against the Blue Jays. Before the injury, what was it, broken leg? Really, really good. Sub 2.5 ERA. Prior to that, two-time All-Star closer. The credentials for Clay Holmes are really good. It's just a matter of staying healthy. Tyrone Taylor mashes left-handed pitching, but you have to give up a fringe top 100 prospect to get him. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Holmes was a really good reliever a couple years ago. He had some issues, I think, with the Yankees at times in being leveraged spots. The Mets acquired him, and I believe it was the free agent signing, and converted him to a starter and did a great job with that transition. He turned into a very good starter last year. He kind of broke down a little at the end of the season, but I think that was purely from a workload standpoint of not throwing close to 140 innings or whatever he threw in 2025. This season, again, he runs into that injury. I think he would have been on track to do the exact same thing. When he pitches, he is very good because he's incredibly hard to barrel, given how his sinker works off his really high slot. So that is the key thing you're adding in, and you mix him in. You saw this in the presser little scrum he had. He talked about how excited he is to play for this defense. That is because he's on the ground like 65% of the time.
So if you hit it on the ground, okay, hit it to Nico, hit it to Dansby.
He's the guy that you put him in a playoff series. If he gives up a home run, I will be surprised because he's so hard to lift as a pitcher. And I think that is really good fit in the Cubs organization at Wrigley Field in the playoffs. So he's an exciting arm. I hope they extend him. I hope that this is not Rojas for rental and rental. I hope it's Rojas with the chance that we think there's some idea we can extend him for a reasonable enough price and it becomes more palatable. Because I do think Rojas is a very good player. He's completely blocked in the Cubs organization unless you decided to throw him out in left field at some point, which I don't think he's played in any of the outfield in his minor league career.
He is not, just playing third and second.
So, I just think he is more valuable to other teams, but I do think he's a very good hitter. I think he will hit. So, it's a tougher one. We do a lot of Road to Wrigley stuff. We follow these guys. Rojas' development has been really fun to see. I don't think he's a shortstop. I think it's more second, third. But I think the bat's legit. So, there's a chance you look back at this and go, dang, I wish there was a way to keep Rojas. But even as you're saying that, potentially as a Cubs fan in 3 years, there's a number of things that can transpire to make it a more digestible of a trade to deal with if the Cubs go deep in the postseason, if they win a World Series. There's all this stuff that can kind of absolve any blame you could run into on Rojas being a very good player. Because he, to me, is one of the better prospects that was traded at the deadline as a whole. Arjun Nimala going to the Angels is a very good prospect, but I think Rojas is right up there with him.
All right, one more trade, one that doesn't necessarily impact the 2026 Cubs. It may, probably not, but one that you want to talk about. Braxton Garrett coming from the Miami Marlins and the Cubs dealing two prospects, one of them being Johnny Long and another one, Jay Speck, who really, prospered and went elevated onto the Cubs scene. Nobody really heard of him up until 2 months ago. Pitched really well, made it up to AAA. You look at Johnny Long, who was a minor league player of the year. He is also blocked, so being able to get a controllable left-handed starter who early on in his career, 2023 to be specific, he was good. I mean, he was a fringe number 2 starter. So that's the way I look at it. He's coming back from Tommy John surgery, has been in AAA for the majority of this year, even pitched a no-hitter with Jacksonville. I like the deal. Lance, you're more interested in it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this was the name. I was talking to a bunch of people, as many people are on deadline day, just trying to get thoughts on various transactions that happened. And two people from separate organizations mentioned this trade being the one they like the most. Just from the standpoint, not from the rental standpoint. Rental's in a different category. I think it was more from of the controllable pieces for multiple years that were moved, who do you like? And everyone liked this. He was a guy that is A, really cheap, B, coming off Tommy John. So I would take the results and throw him out, from this season where he hasn't been good for the most part, aside from that no-hitter you mentioned.
And also been really good in AAA. He's got a 2.9 ERA and a hitter's lead.
And it's an interesting profile. The Cubs love these guys who can get on the side of the ball with their fastball. You call it cutting your fastball. Think of Justin Steele. Think of Cade Horton. They do this continually. Zephyr John's in the same boat. David Peterson's in this area. Clay Holmes is in this area as well. So he has that kind of cutty fastball, throws a sink off that, very light changeup usage. But the key thing here is his breaking ball shapes are really nice. He's got a sweeper that he didn't throw a ton in the most recent couple seasons, but I do think the Cubs will emphasize a bit his good ability to hold velocity on his breaking balls too. I think this is a velo push. You got him on multiple years of control. He's incredibly cheap too. I think he's got 2 more years of ARB left, and he's not going to make over a couple million.
2029.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that it lines up really nicely as we don't really need, Jay Speck's kind of interesting Is he a guy that was going to impact this team this year? I don't know. Jonathan Long, right first base profile is pretty replaceable. Again, another guy that I didn't see a fit for on the Major League roster. I don't think the Cubs did too, dating back to even last season when he was mashing. Just didn't get time in the majors. But yeah, I like this one. This was one that I initially was like, oh, kind of interesting. But then you bring it back and you talk to other people in baseball, and they're like, this is a transaction that I think a lot of teams were trying to make with the Marlins to get a very cost-controlled pitcher who has some trajectory and upside over the next couple seasons. So I love the blend the Cubs went after of Zephyr-John, Braxton Garrett long-term and also near-term with Zephyr-John. And then you have the immediate win-now stuff with Gausman and Holmes and Taylor. So I think they crushed this deadline. It's a very nice blend of being conscious of the next couple of years, but also putting yourself in a really good position to compete with the Brewers, the Phillies, the Dodgers for the NL crown.
Don't discount Tyrone Taylor. He mashes against lefties, and he's above average defensive outfielder. All three outfield positions means you can get Pete Crow Armstrong off his feet.
I agree. Yeah, he's a name that I don't think is going to model out really attractively from a WAR standpoint and stuff. But again, talking to other people, he's a name that someone was telling me that when teams simulate out postseason stuff, so most organizations do this where they'll literally have models that are like, hey, how do we match up versus the Dodgers? What's our win percentage? How do we improve that win percentage? I do think Tyrone Taylor is going to have massive at-bats in the postseason versus very good lefty relievers. There's a lot of these teams in the NL that have sick lefties. Mason Montgomery on the Pirates, Vesia, Tanner
also
Scott.
sick left-handed starting pitching. The Christopher Sanchez's, the Kyle Harrisons. You might face off against them.
You might need Tyrone Taylor to play
Blake
if
Snell.
you face the Phillies, you may need him to start a couple innings, and then you rotate him out as they bring in righty relievers. So he's a piece that is like a chess piece that's really valuable for Counsell in the front office to maneuver.
Good trade deadline for the Cubs. Better trade deadline recap from Lance and Alex. We'll give it an A for the Cubs, A+ for us. We're going to take a break here on Cubs Now. When we come back, we'll recap the homestand against the Yankees, the Dodgers, the MVP race coming up next. Back here, Block B, Cubs Now, Alex Cohen, Lance Brozdowski, and Block A. We talked about the 2026 Major League Baseball trade deadline. We're well past that on Block B. We have a homestand here for the Cubs. They lose that series against the Yankees to start things off, go against some really tough starting pitching. That's the bad news. The good news is win the series against a struggling Dodgers team.
Yeah, I mean, this was a fun matchup. I went in the stadium to watch Skubal from behind home a little, as I always do when there's a great pitcher out there. I enjoy doing that, and sometimes I'm able to sneak behind home for a second. I know a couple of the ushers, and I can be like, hey, you have a seat open for an inning or two before I head back and help with post-game stuff.
Mr. VIP.
I know, Mr. VIP. My guy, Angelo, and I don't think that's section 108 is my guy. He's the man, Angelo. Shout out Angelo.
If you're watching.
He's a great guy. But I sometimes sneak down there and watch, and I went in and I was like, I don't think I'm going to get a seat. I was in the bottom of the first inning, and it was
Did you feel it was a playoff atmosphere? There was palpable energy in this.
I think that is the singular series this year, and it's also a weekday. It wasn't even a weekend. I feel like in the past there's been some.
Skubal said it. He said that this is different. Yeah.
July 4th series last year with the Cardinals, I remember being incredibly packed. There's some other weekends throughout the season that are always very dense, but Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday series against the Dodgers was the most busy I've seen a non-playoff game during the week at night. And we've been here for 5 years as Marquee, 6 years. I don't even remember. It's been a while at this point.
Yeah.
But it was a great series.
So they beat Skubal, Javier Assad outdueled Skubal. They went back-to-back games against the Dodgers. This team seems to be really playing well. They were, after that win against the Dodgers, against Skubal, 31-15 in their last 46 games. That's a prolonged period of time of being the best team in the National League and the second best team in baseball next to the Red Sox. It's a really nice brand of baseball.
It is, yeah. They've been playing really well. I think the surprising part to me is that they've bridged to the deadline well. We talked about our concerns on various prior episodes over the last couple months about how you get to the deadline such that you make transactions that make you better from a pitching staff standpoint. I was worried, man. I don't know. You tell me that you get two. Listen, Assad and Ray have been great, and that is the key thing I'm pointing out here is when you're projecting those guys out, you might be a little hesitant to be like, man, that's 40% of our rotation. But they pitched so well, and now you take a bit of pressure off them by adding in. David Peterson's been great, but Gausman and Holmes in particular,
and getting those guys Cabrera back,
and getting Cabrera back, and. That is huge. I just think they did an incredible job. That is the story of the season to me, is that, you ran into a bunch of pitching injuries, but you still bridged this 2-month-ish period, month-and-a-half period. Despite the fact you're still pretty dead average around as a staff, as a whole, you were able to pitch well enough to let the offense do let the offense win games, basically. Let Assad go 5 and give up 3. Like, you have to score 4 in the game to win. And that was what I think they continually did that doesn't really look flashy from a leaderboard standpoint on the pitching side, but at the end of the day has been the reason they are where they are. They're like 16, 17 games above 500.
Couple things about the Dodgers. They added already to a strength with Skubal going to a rotation that has Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Tyler Glasnow getting healthy, Blake Snell getting healthy. But their offense really over the last 4 weeks, I mean, you're talking 30 games, they've struggled. They have a team OPS in the 6s. I don't know if they're a shoo-in to go to the World Series. What do you think?
I think that they're the favorite. You know, you can't guarantee it. Anything in baseball is going to land in some realm of probability that is somewhere around 50%. It's a very wacky sport in that respect. I think they're kind of old as an offense.
They're kind of old as an offense, and they're kind of old as a bullpen.
They are. It's a little bit odd. You know, their staff is really the problem. Like, you caught Skubal, but they're going to line up their starters in a way that's going to make it very frustrating for good offenses. The thing I want to ask you about, though, is Kyle Tucker being booed at Wrigley.
Yes.
I thought it was inevitable. You know, I think we all thought it was inevitable based on how things, I think, went at the end of the years. Fabio Nardai does a great job
I'll
for the
read the
Athletic.
tweet. Kyle
give it to me.
Tucker on getting booed. I tried my hardest last year. I tried playing through a hand fracture and a calf thing, just trying to get back to the playoffs for them and trying to do what I could to help out the team last year with them. Fair or foul? Was the booing deserved? I think that we're on opposite sides of this. I'm going to let you go first.
I don't. I know my thought here is going to run counter to what everyone thinks that is a Cubs fan based on what I've seen on social media. I don't think he deserved the booing. I think it is okay to boo him, if that makes sense. I'm kind of straddling the line here, but deserving the boos is tough. Like,
All right, Switzerland.
how many? Like, I know. My friends sometimes call me that. How many times do you boo a 5-WAR? He's basically a 5-WAR player. He's
for one year, and then goes to the team who won 2 World Series in a row for $60 million a year?
I mean, listen, how many free agents don't just take the most money given to them? That is one question.
But fans don't have to be happy with that.
I agree. I'm not saying they don't have a right to boo, but it doesn't entirely make sense to me. You know, I just don't. He's an incredible player. I'd love to know the last player in baseball.
An incredible player. He was a very, very good player. He was an all-star, and a big reason why the Chicago Cubs made the playoffs in 2026, and I mean this, is because Kyle Tucker went off in the beginning of May to the middle of June. He was really good, but the second half of the season, he didn't play particularly well.
That's fair. That's fair.
He didn't play particularly well.
All right. My question to you is, if you sequence his season differently, if he sucked for the first 3 months, and then he still got the exact same WAR, and the season ended the same way of him taking called strike with the middle of the play from Aaron Ashby, which was an incredible pitch call. It's not him taking 99. I love the Twitter people who are like, that meatball over the middle of the plate. I'm like, it's 99 miles per hour.
Yeah,
like,
no,
what are we doing here? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, meatball at 99 is not a meatball. Anyways, I could talk about that for hours.
It's a big meatball.
It's a very tiny meatball.
Tiny meatball, actually.
It's like you get gypped at the Italian restaurant. You're like, what is
true.
this?
Yeah.
If you sequence the season differently for him, and he's bad to start, really good, and then let's say he has the exact same playoffs, everything else happens the same, does he still get booed?
Playoffs happen the same, and then he goes to the Dodgers for a team that won back-to-back World Series for $60 million a year, where there was some thought, at least when he came to the Cubs, that he was either going to be one and done and the Cubs would win, or they traded Cam Smith and they traded Isaac Paredes and they traded Hayden Wesneski, that he would stay here long term. But the fact of the matter is, he didn't stay here long term, and he signed with,
so you think the booing was more that he left?
Team. What's that?
The booing is more that he left. Not
I think it was due
poorly.
to the playoffs. It was due to the end of the season and the fact that he left to a front-running team.
Okay, so it's a combo of all three. I think that the booing is more justified if it is you went to the Dodgers, which is fair, but like at the same time, I don't know.
But why is it bad to boo an opposing player?
I'm not saying it's bad.
We're not throwing snowballs at Santa Claus. We're not throwing batteries at J.D. Drew. It's an opponent. He's getting booed. It's fine.
I think it's totally fine to boo him. I don't think he entirely deserves it as much as the boos resonated in that stadium when he came to the plate. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of like angst built up. There's the playoff angst built up.
We're a big sports town. Visiting players, any player can get booed for any reason.
I get it.
I do not care. I'm with you guys.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not going to boo a guy who had 5 WAR. Like, I guess I'm taking the pro player side. I just think I have never seen a player not take the most money they were given. Like, who's the last? Like, did Joey Votto probably? He might be like the
We're talking
only
like
one.
hometown discount. Yeah.
So it's like you're booing the Waltons at that point. You know what I mean? Like, you're booing the fact that they have Guggenheim, which has like $300 billion in assets. Like,
if it were
know.
flipped, and let's say he crushed it the last 2 months of the season, I think the boos would be a little bit limited. But just with the way that they finish in the playoffs, and then going to the Dodgers, especially with everything that they gave up for him, I think it warrants boos. I mean, and boos aren't like that passionate and mean to me. It's just
no. They can totally boo them. It's just more the rationale behind the booing that I'm like, I'm not sure I agree
5 more
with,
player,
you know
very
what I mean?
productive. Do you think that he exceeded expectations from last year, met them, or were below expectations?
Wow, that's a great question,
Right?
actually. I think he was perfectly on par with the expectations. He was probably projected for about 5 WAR. He got to 4.5, and he was bad in the playoffs and struggled. The other thing, we don't have enough time to get into this, but I do find it interesting. He mentioned in that tweet that he played through 2 injuries. I often wonder, like, I know players always want to be out there, like, give me the ball and all this stuff. There's a point where that becomes a detriment to your team.
Yes.
You know? And it's like he was out there because, and I'm definitely ascribing my beliefs to him. He was out there because he had been injured the prior couple years, and it's going to look really nice going into free agency,
Correct.
Showing that you played 145.
I would agree with you. I don't know that for a fact.
We don't know.
I'm
that purely
logically makes sense.
speculating. But I do think that's maybe an element. Is like, I don't know if we should champion him for playing through injury. Like, if he was IL'd for 3 weeks and then he came back and was healthy. If you're telling me you could have had a better season with a lower games played total,
I agree.
Maybe you boo him for that. That's too complex of a boo, though, perhaps. I don't know.
Okay. To answer your question, fair. You can boo Kyle Tucker. Great episode of Cubs Now. A lot of fun to talk about for the Cubs. For Lance Brozdowski, Alex Cohen will say so long. Thanks for watching.